Hello, listeners and readers of AwardsWatch.com. This is the Awards Watch Podcast, episode 291. I'm your executive editor, Ryan McQuade. Joining me today is Karen Peterson.
Hello.
It's just me and Karen today. Those are always the best ones, right, Karen? When it's just you and me.
We don't need anybody else.
We don't need anybody else. Everyone's still trying to recover, too, from the last 2 weeks where we had like 2 4-hour shows that we did the best actress tier ranking on. So everyone's, I think for the rest of the team and Kevin and everybody else, they're resting. I think they're still trying to recoup. And Karen is here to talk about the latest film from Celine Song. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm doing all right. And I could probably talk about this movie for 4 hours, but I promise I won't.
Okay. Well, I think it's fair to the listeners, maybe fair to ourselves, because, it's at the time we're recording this, we're both kind of exhausted, but we're going to get through it because we got Celine Song to help us, guide us for this week's episode. And this is primarily only what we're talking about today is this movie, her new movie, Materialists, which is hitting theaters nationwide this weekend. And it is her follow-up to one of the best debuts of the last 25, 30 years, maybe of all time, really, in past lives. One of the best films of 2023. She returns here with a film starring Dakota Johnson, Pedro Pascal, and Chris Evans about a matchmaker in what a lot of people has believed it to be a romantic comedy based off of the trailer, some of the marketing. But as we're going to talk about today, it might be there's a little bit more to that than just that simplistic label, right? And what Materialist is. Karen, I know you just literally got out of your screening for this thing.
I did.
And so that's what I love. I always love when we do these when it's me and Karen because she literally just got out of the theater. It's like right after when we did the trap episode last year. She got out of the trap and now she's in a different trap, which is this podcast. And so you're here to talk about Materialists with me. Karen, what is your thoughts? Well, what are your thoughts on past lives? I think I know this and I think sort of you universally love, but it seems there's also like weirdly online some backlash about that movie, or it's not as liked or loved as I thought it was at the time, which kind of feels weird. But what are your thoughts on Past Lives, Celine Song, and then your thoughts on Materialists?
Well, first of all, I do not recognize negative feedback against Celine Song because she is an angel and a wonderful, wonderful filmmaker,
She is.
and everything she does is perfection. So, so anybody who has problems with that obviously just doesn't like good movies.
Maybe it's just my timeline, but it feels like
Maybe
why
you
am,
just need to release the negative and
I don't know.
embrace people who
Listen,
love
it's on
movies.
there. I can't look away. I'm like, it's because I get so curious, Karen. You know me. I get curious and I'm like, wait, what are we talking about here? Why are why are we
I'm going
saying
to be
this stuff?
really honest. I actually hardly spend any time on social media
I
anymore at
know.
all,
I
which
know.
when you cover the industry, that's actually not necessarily a good thing because I feel very checked out
It's
what's happening
okay.
in the world.
I think you're in a healthier place than I am at this point.
I
At this
think
point.
I am. I think I
Yeah.
am. I also forget certain people exist altogether, which
Oh,
is
that's
also
fair.
wonderful.
That's fair. The mute button's strong
People
sometimes these days.
very healthy.
Yeah.
So yeah, mute and block are your best friends when it comes to certain things. But Celine Song is someone I would never mute or block
No.
because again, she is wonderful and what she does is just perfection. So yeah. It's funny because you were talking about how I literally just drove home from the theater and we started recording this. And I always feel a little bit I don't even know what the right word is right now, but I'm always a little reluctant to do reviews that way, just because I like to have some time to sit in the feelings of a movie and really think about it and decide how I feel. But this is one that I was thinking about it as I was watching it. And I was really partly because I knew I had to go home and talk about it, but also just because I think she as a filmmaker gives you time to do that while you're watching it. She's very patient. She doesn't rush through her story. It's also not long. It's under 2 hours, and yet it feels very not methodical. That's not quite it, but just
very planned. She's very,
Yeah,
yeah.
curated maybe. That's not quite right either. But she knows exactly what she's doing. She knows what story she wants to tell. And what I love is how she defies expectations. From the trailers, it looked like this was going to be sort of a love triangle romantic comedy, maybe a little bit less hilarious than, say, you know, my best friend's wedding or something like that. But still in that sort of vein. But those aren't the movies that she makes. She really is interested in people and and the things that connect them, the things that push them away from each other, and just letting people be who they really are. And I think that that is what's so beautiful about Materialists, is that people are very honest about who they are. Nobody at any level is pretending to be anything they're not. They're pretty bold and just right out front about it. And she doesn't judge. It doesn't feel judgmental. It just feels like this is, just these are the people that we're dealing with, and just let's sit back and enjoy watching what happens between them. And so I think it's a really lovely movie. I uh, have some thoughts about some of the choices that are made, but that is to credit to Celine Song, and because I don't think that there's any obvious answer in any direction. And I just, yeah, I really love this. It feels like a romantic comedy that is really set in reality. It's not a fairy tale. Some of it is a little bit fairy tale like, but it's not the kind that ruins and gives people unrealistic expectations about love. And I think that's what I really enjoyed about it so much.
Yeah, I saw this earlier in the week, and I'm a big fan of Celine Song. The last time I saw um her film, I mean, when I saw her last film, Past Lives, I I broke my cardinal rule, and Karen knows, I think she knows my cardinal rule, which is I don't give out 5-star films to movies within a given year. And I was like one of the last people here on the site to see the film. Everybody had sort of seen it before me. I was like, oh man, it can't be that good. Like there's, you know what I mean? When you see like so much praise on something, Karen, you're like, man, I think I'm just bound to disappoint myself. And then I watched that movie and I was just an absolute mess. And then I had the privilege at the Middleburg Film Festival to sit down with Celine Song and have a conversation and have, I think, just a life-changing conversation with her. I think she is, if you ever get the chance to meet her and talk about film or even hear her talk about film, she is so intelligent. And for a fairly new filmmaker, she's so confident in the vision. Like you're sort of mentioning there, Karen, at the top, she's meticulous. She knows how these stories are going to be built from the script out. And I was listening to her talk on the interview with Brandon Lewis on the website, and he had a quick conversation with her that's live there, and talked about how in that first film, she felt like she was a writer, and in this film, she had made that first film, so now she feels fully like a director, so she could get through the jargon, get through the first round, right? And what a first round to get through, which is this, one of the great films of the decade so far, and come out with a different approach and a turn on its head examination of the romantic comedy, which is a genre that is a massive guilty pleasure for me. I love romantic comedies. I mean, for God's sakes, Karen knows this. We did a whole Nancy Meyers series on Director Watch. We've done very limited directors so far. So for Nancy to be one of those and make some of my favorite films, most enjoyable films, rewatchable films, I go back to this genre all the time because it's a warm hug. But within a lot of that, Karen, you have to sort of, know that this is a fantasy. It's as much sci-fi as Lord of the Rings at times, some of these movies, you know what I mean? Because there's a reality about the dating world that I think that this movie gets, that for at least for 30 somethings, in this world that a lot of my friends talk about, and it's always then the that makes you appreciate your partner that you're with. This movie made me appreciate my wife, because it's like, thank God I'm not single and out and having to deal with this, because I think that there's, especially in the bigger the city, it starts feeling like relationships are transactional, where people are settling based off of uh, digits rather than matters of the heart. And I think she understands that completely. And that's what Lucy's sort of journey is here. She's choosing between stability versus real emotion and history in a lot of ways. But she's doing it through these blunt conversations that feel exactly how we talk about, in a world, in my opinion, where a generation is not going to have the same opportunities as the generations before. It People are very lucky to be able to own houses and cars and be able to have high paying jobs. So in this reality where she's having a conversation with a man at making like 6, 7, 8 times what she's making, and yet she's confident because she knows what she wants. She knows she's either going to be a a confirmed bachelorette for the rest of her life, or she's going to marry rich, and she knows that it's kind of blunt honesty that I don't think a lot of people really think about, but it's the reality of, okay, well, how am I going to get the life and the American dream, the house and the picket fence and all the things that were promised to me when at a young age, that if you work hard, you get here. Well, in the world we live in right now, Karen, those don't exist. They don't exist. So you have to put on a shield and armor when you're going out and finding the next person. And it then so happens to be that she is a matchmaker, and her job is to look and analyze people's wants and needs and patterns. And yet she's great at that. But in her own life, there is that vulnerability when Chris Evans comes in. I think too that's so great about it. It's like, that's the history. That's the kind of guy that she would want to be, because she loves him, but he's down on his luck. But he's never going to get past this point. And it's the honesty within oneself. It's like, am I okay to settle here at this place, or be at this other place and lose out on maybe real emotional connection? And I think the balance here through song script, and that's really the love triangle, is the two ideas that Lucy is battling with. It's not the men in this movie. And I think that that's super smart, because the guys she's choosing is Pedro Pascal or Chris Evans. Tough choice. It's not even anything about their looks. It's about what they have. And that's where the title comes from. And is this emotional or materialistic? Is this the apartment with with the terrible roommates, or is it the $12 million apartment? Which one do you want? Which is the life you're willing, that you think you deserve or that you want? And I think that that's a really interesting thing for her to do, to follow up where she literally had the love triangle, but it wasn't really a love triangle. I think people wanted that movie to be a love triangle. That movie is more about, she's with her husband, she's happy with her husband, but it's closure of the past in order for her to move on for Nora to move on in the present, because that stuff's still lingering. Past always lingers here. And I think that some of those similarities are being brought back here, but some of the stuff in this movie is so modern. And I didn't think about Nancy, and I didn't think about Nora Ephron, and I didn't think, you mentioned, like Hugh Grant films or Julia Roberts films, things. I was thinking a lot about James L. Brooks. And then it so happened A24 decided to leave the syllabus out there for all of us the last couple of days, of the list of films that Celine Song was inspired by. And it was James L. Brooks, and it was Jane Austen. And I felt that all the way through in this film, those influences being able to showcase a modern lens inside of Lucy's decision making, and a lot of honest dialogue and conversations. I do think, though, and I do have one or two little complaints, nothing crazy, but I do think that this is a really fascinating sophomore follow up to Past Lives, and there were times, Karen, it got me emotionally because I felt for other characters outside of these trio here too, and then that I think those actions, and we can talk about those, they only then heighten the decisions that Lucy has to make throughout the third act of the film. So I really dug this movie. I think it's really great.
Yeah, it's very great. You mentioned kind of the comparison, the love triangle idea with Past Lives and now with this, and I totally agree with you that I think people go in expecting an actual love triangle between a woman and two men in both cases. And neither of these films is really that. And I think that's one of the reasons I liked and appreciated Materialists so much is that it does set it up like she's going to be like Lucy's really going to be trying to choose between John, the guy from her past who she always loved, but it just didn't feel like the right fit for her. And that's Chris Evans' character. And then Pedro Pascal's Harry, who is just so charming and rich and can give her everything she's ever dreamed of and is able to provide all the things that she wants to, not just what she could have, but what she's always wanted and sort of expected. If she's going to decide to get married, this is the person that she has decided is acceptable for her. And what I really like is how those relationships are shown and how neither man is trying to like win her away from the other. This doesn't end up in Pedro and Chris having a fist fight in the streets, although I absolutely adore Bridget Jones's Diary and I love the fight scene. Like, that's great. But this isn't that type of movie. This is very realistic. Well, in as much of a way as
in the world that she sets up here.
Exactly. Yeah. And this is, she meets this rich, wonderful man at a wedding of two people that she set up. And he's very charming and he kind of woos her. And they have this great conversation over dinner, one of several dinners they've been on. And they're very honest with each other about what they want and what they expect. And then they decide, you know what? Okay, we're going to be in a relationship now. And it's interesting how they go home to his place that night. It seems to be the first time she's seen it because she's, walking around just totally in awe of this beautiful,
she's like
silent apartment in the
kissing
middle of
him, and she's like, "What?" And the
checking
ceilings
it all out.
and
It's just, yeah.
How tall? Where's the kitchen? Like she's
Exactly.
looking at all of it like any of us would at that
Yeah.
point.
And what I love is the very next morning, she wakes up in his apartment. She gets up, goes out, and he has prepared breakfast for her or had someone do it. It seems like he did it because I don't see anybody else around. He's on the phone. He's all dressed. Breakfast. I think he did. Yeah. He's all dressed in his suit. He's on the phone and he just like kisses her goodbye and leaves.
Hands her the keys.
Right. But what I like about that so much is it's like, okay, he did all the work to get her there and now they've decided they're in a relationship and now he's just in the relationship. He's not still trying to win her. Yeah. And she's just like, okay, this is just life now. And so
because it was her choice in a lot of ways, right?
Right. But what I'm getting at is like they were having these conversations and then as soon as they're in a relationship together, then that's just kind of it. They just go about their business and they don't really talk. We don't really see them have a conversation anymore until the night that they break up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like they're disconnected either. It just feels like, okay, they did what they needed. They conducted their transaction. They came to an agreement and now they are together. And then you don't have John, the Chris Evans character, trying to steal her away. He accepts that she's in this relationship with this other guy and it's just how it is, And so I like that there's not the only internal struggle she has is what's happening with her job. And then also what really is important to her and making that realization that she's actually not in love with Pedro Pascal's character. And as much as he can give her everything, he's really not the guy that she wants. And she has to come to that realization. It's not because of anything he did. And she also has to help him understand that he doesn't love her either. And they both are deserving of love. And they both deserve to be in relationships with people that love them back. And I just think there's so much, like there's this calm. I think that's what I just really felt through the whole thing. There's just so much calm in knowing what you want and expressing that to somebody who does care about you and who also knows what they want. And I think that's why I liked this so much, is because it doesn't feel like really heightened, artificially heightened emotions. It doesn't feel like people are, just desperate. I mean, you definitely get some desperate characters in here that, some of Lucy's clients, but the core characters that we're following, it's not out of desperation. It's just people living their lives that are just trying to figure out what's next for them. And it's, yeah, it's, there's so many things I'd like to say about this, but I just, yeah, I really like how it's not overly dramatic, which is so much of, I mean, when there's drama in life, it's because we bring it on ourselves. And these are
Yeah.
not dramatic people, even though you've got John, who's an actor. These are not people that are going to make a big scene, and except for maybe a fight in the road in the middle of the street. But,
But
you
we,
know,
but I think honestly, Karen, she wrote adults. Like
mm-hmm,
in romantic
mm-hmm,
comedies, people, the emotions get the best of them,
yeah,
and they make these, the trope of the romantic gesture, the big
mm-hmm,
romantic gesture, right, looms over at the end of most of romantic comedies. Even as late as something like Crazy Rich Asians a couple years ago, that ends on a romantic gesture on a plane.
and it's
And
great, and we
they're
love
great,
it,
and
and
we
it's
all
so
clap,
fun
and we're like,
for
yes,
the
yes,
movies.
yeah, for the movies, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, isn't love great? But like the reality is that, to your point, the first date they go on, she says, "You don't, I don't like you. You and I don't work. I like you because you think you like me and can impress me with romantic dinners, and I'm not going to say no to a romantic dinner because in reality, Karen, no one's going to say no to a nice dinner in New York City at some of the best restaurants." And we see the montage of them getting to know each other, but she then, on the last date that they confirm they're in a relationship, she's like, I don't know if I love you or love that you pick up the way you pick up the bill. Like, that's just a brutally honest way of just saying, like, I don't know if I love you or your money.
Mm-hmm,
And I think I love your money more than I love you.
mm-hmm,
And he just convinces her, no, I think you're not giving this an actual chance. But when stressful things happen in life, people lean on those that they love and care. And when she has the thing that really propels, I think, the second act of this movie
mm-hmm,
and everything, when she has that moment at work where everything kind of, all her momentum in the sort of comedy of the film, the lightness, the airiness of this film, which I wouldn't call this a comedy. I just think that it's light, and then it gets real, because life gets real. It has that feeling, Karen. You know what it's like when you're doing good and everything's fine and you're in control, and then life turns a curve,
mm-hmm,
or the car turns and you are stuck facing an obstacle that you kind of created, but you didn't know you were creating it. It was it was completely out of your hands, or maybe it was a part of your hands, or whatever, or you just weren't seeing it because you were focused on something else, right? It just happens. That's life. And in this case, it's a horrific thing that happens. And she takes it very personal. And who is the person she calls? Who is the person she tells? She tells the ex-boyfriend that she's reconnected with, not the guy she's with. And I
yeah.
think that says a lot. But
Not only that,
John,
though,
yeah. Oh,
well,
sorry.
she calls John. He asks to come over, and she says, "No, I'm getting ready to go to Harry's."
Yes. And when she sees
Like, she calls
Harry,
him when she's about to go to Harry's
and
house.
yes, and when she sees Harry, they're about to go see John.
Mm-hmm.
In that moment, they're going to his play. And
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't tell him any of this.
Nope.
She doesn't when they're in bed. They're not talking to each other.
Right.
Like you're right. That breakfast says everything. They've made the deal, they've signed the lease, and they're in this relationship.
Yep.
And he's made the down payments of the dates and the flowers and all these things. And he's like, you're my investment. I want to invest in you because I think you're someone that checks all the boxes, as she says in her job. So, and what she can't realize is that she's this guy is playing matchmaker in his own way with her, and she's resisting it. But it's not in a resistance that you would feel is terrible. It's just honest, like, hey, we've been hanging out a lot together. This feels right. Let's just
Hmm.
do it. And she has to come to that realization over time, because when life is tough, you want to be there with the people that matter most to you. And John, just like Harry, is not hiding who he is. He's not hiding that he's a 30 something year old, washed up actor getting a catering gig. And that's his form of income, and that he's in sort of a rent controlled apartment, and he's with these, and that the apartment's falling apart, and that the roommates are interchanging, but he's staying there because this is his life. He's chose this, and he's okay with it. You know what I mean? And she got fed up with it, as anybody would. But it's the old expression: sometimes the grass isn't greener on the other side. Sometimes it's just grass. It's the same grass, or sometimes it's even worse. And that's what that one. We only get the one flashback, and I think that that's enough. Where you see that she's just fed up. She doesn't want to. She wants the idea of Harry, but she really wants someone like John that she can connect with, because when she's in that car with him, that beat up, car, and driving with him, from the moment she's at the catering place to later when they're driving out in the countryside of New York, she's happy. She's comfortable. And she's going to still figure out all the details later. That'll get resolved within time. Time will fix all that. But it's not nostalgic. It's comfortable. And I think that Song understands that about the characters. And that's what I think the actors understand too. And so when decisions are made, like when Harry and Lucy break up, it's a mutual, adult, respectful. It isn't just large, grand thing. It is, we try to make it work, and you know what? You're right. You were kind of right. And it does end on a little bit of a funny note of a joke that's a callback from earlier in the film, and Pedro Pascal, I think, plays it wonderfully. Um, but there's harsh realities and harsh truths, and it weirdly is interesting that, like, it mirrors a lot of the truths that are said between Greta Lee and John Magaro about their marriage in past lives, and how that then, if you had any doubt that they loved each other in that scene, there's no doubt anymore. And in this, if you thought that she should be with Pedro, that doubt is, you know, is evident by their breakup, that it wasn't meant to be. There's a little bit of mirroring, not much. I don't think that there's a lot of mirroring with both of them, but I do think that those two scenes, at least, which are turning points of both films, I do think they kind of mirror each other for their opposite. But
I
but
do
I think
think though
John's
that,
really interesting of a character, but we can talk about him in a minute.
oh yeah, for sure. But I do think one of the things that makes Celine Song such a good writer, in addition to a good director, though, is that I don't feel like I don't feel like there's a right answer. I think that there's a right answer for Lucy, but
Yeah,
I think that she's very specifically that this is Lucy's right choice. I don't think that she would judge anybody
no.
who chose Harry
Well, if she
because
stayed in that relationship,
Mhm.
we're going to sit there as the audience, and I can tell you this, Karen. This is a funny story. I've not gone to many screenings where outside of festivals where an audience reacts. But I could tell you could maybe Celine Song one day I'll be able to tell her this, or we can tell her this. But when she said, "I'm not in love with you," My audience gasped. Like, and we're in an Alamo Draft House. You're not supposed to talk. And people went, no. I heard one woman scream, no. Because I think that but it's not judging her. It's just like, oh no, I would have made it work. I would have stayed with them.
I
You
think
got
that's also because people are looking at it as that's Pedro
yeah,
Pascal.
that
How do you
too.
not love Pedro
How
Pascal?
do you not love that man? How give him another chance, you know?
Exactly.
But I
Exactly.
think you're absolutely right. For Lucy's journey, I don't judge, and the film doesn't judge her for either way. She has to organically make this decision on her own through trial and error. Because at the end of the movie, if she didn't pick either one of them, I honestly wouldn't blame her there either.
Hmm.
Like if she picked both, would I mean, great choice if you pick both. You know,
I mean,
I mean, we're not going to say no to that. But if she didn't pick either one of them, I think it would have been great
yeah.
either way.
There's something else that I think is so subtle. I don't think I don't think, and again, I literally just watched it. I need to think more about it. I probably won't, I'm probably going to go see it again in the next week or so because I just really liked this so much. But um, something else that I thought was really masterfully done was going back to what you were talking about with Lucy being in the car with John, this old beat up car that he's still driving, and he's still living in the same apartment, and everything is kind of still how it was whenever their relationship ended, and it's really not even clear how long it's been. It's obviously been a long time. It's also obvious that at some point they have reconnected. They've never totally lost touch because he makes a comment about them seeing, like, it sounds like they run into each other once in a while. This isn't the first time that they've seen each other since they broke up. Um, but what I really liked is how he makes a comment about how he hasn't changed. And what we see though is that's not true. He has. Breaking up with Lucy, or her breaking up with him, I think it had a much deeper and a much bigger impact on him than he even realized. And even though he hasn't physically changed any of his circumstances, he still lives in the same place, he's still driving the same car, he's still trying to do the same job. He clearly has grown up some. And as soon as he has a real opportunity to reconnect with her in a meaningful way, he's starting to notice the things in his life that suck, that are the same, that really should be different. And he's identifying that without her having to say, the only way I'm going to be with you is if you move out of your crappy apartment. He has changed. He just doesn't know it. And I think that's another thing that is so realistic about people is we are changing. We're all changing all the time, or at least we should be. And the thing is that it's because we're stuck inside ourselves. We're living our own reality. We don't see the changes that we make along the way until things have really gotten different. And so I think that that's another really beautiful, subtle thing that Celine Song does. And yeah.
Not to think about Nancy when you were saying there, but it does kind of make you think about the premise of something like It's Complicated, about like
Mm-hmm.
these people that have in through an affair or coming back together. But the thing about Alec Baldwin's character is he's not changed at all. He's still the same, you know, asshole that married
Yeah.
Meryl Streep, and he's just still, you know, going from girl to girl and chasing after unobtainable things. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right. I think John grows up, even though nothing around him has changed. His bank account has not changed. His clothes haven't changed. The rent hasn't changed. Nothing has changed except that he is fundamentally aware of the flaws that caused the relationship of his life to crumble. And I think that scene at the bar where they're together, it's like you could clearly just, I mean, listen, you tell from the minute they're talking or the minute he walks into that camera, Dakota Johnson and Chris Evans are like, this is chemistry that's just sparking. But these characters aren't there. And it takes the only romantic gesture is a final plea of saying, I will love you till the end of time. But if you don't want that, that's your choice. I will move on. I'll forget about all this. I'm not going to try to do this over and over again because I can't, I don't want to, John doesn't want to be hurt again by that. And that's a real reality. Even in like friendships, if you have a bad friendship or something and you give it one last chance, you know, and you put all your cards out on the table, it takes two parties to tango. It takes two parties for them to understand in any relationship that someone's not going to put more effort than the other. And that's why Harry and her didn't work out, because I don't think they were putting any effort really into that outside of handshakes and you know, in dinners and, you know, sort of empty calories in a lot of ways. This is a real substantive relationship that you could have. And she clearly loves John and she doesn't care. She's accepted him for who he is and where he is as an actor, as a caterer with no money, all that stuff. She doesn't care about that. She just would like every now and then to be treated special, to be treated with love. And I think it took that separation to realize I had something here and I broke it. And I might not get it back because it's not in the control is not with me anymore. It's totally with Lucy. And I think Evans is incredible in this movie. I think the character's really well written, but I think Evans is really good in this. I think Johnson's very good, and I think they have great chemistry. And I think, man, Celine Song just does, you know, Karen, within Past Lives, the opening of that and then the wedding scene in this, she does a really great job of showing something else that's antithetical to what is actually being said by the characters, where the audience is seeing one thing but being told another. And it doesn't feel like, you know, it doesn't feel cheap. It feels genuine within the world that she sort of created. And when they're at this wedding, that's the only way for them to get food, right? Is like for him to find the caterer and, you know, that he works for. And they're at this wedding and they're talking about maybe the roadblock, maybe the blueprint of what's going to be their future, maybe in a weird way. It's building up that night to, we're going to have to really talk about this. And they're not drunk. They're not, you know, it's not really the turning point in the film, because the turning point comes from a phone call to get him to that point. Because if the movie just ends there, it could have just like ended with that conversation. It's not resolved. Or maybe she says no, drives him home. The movie's done. I don't know. I really think that, to your point, he had to grow up himself, and Song is aware of that. But then, like this whole movie is, it's Lucy's journey and Lucy's choice. And we all see that through Dakota Johnson's lens, because he's asking her, like, are we back together? And she goes, I don't know, because I don't know what any of this is. She can't even connect the data points, and she's the one that deals with data all the time. And I love, the one thing that is funny about the movie is her confidence at the beginning of her job and in the process of love. And as her love life becomes murkier and murkier and her professional life starts becoming that, her advice to others becomes meaner, more realistic, jaded, not telling people, not spoon feeding them sugar, telling them how it might be for them, the obstacles that they might have to face. And that's harsh. Truth can be very harsh, as we kind of see through John. Like, it took her to break up with him for him to realize, like, I'm a child. I need to be an adult. And I think by this point in this movie, we see them all be adults and have these conversations. I also love the choice by Celine Song for Pedro and Chris to not have an interaction, like an actual, like, long conversation at all in this film. Keep it with Lucy's perspective. The only time they ever actually interact is the handshake. And you can tell a lot by a handshake, can't you, Karen? Mm-hmm. When you rewatch that out there, folks, watch that handshake again, and how Evans is reaching out that hand and how Harry reaches out his hand. It's very telling about those characters and the destinations they're about to land on in this film.
It's true. There's a couple of things that you were talking about that I wanted to comment on, and now I have to try to remember both of them. Um, I probably will only remember one, but and now maybe neither. Uh, I think that, man, now you made me forget.
I'm sorry.
Oh, so her having those honest conversations, not with the men in her life, but with her clients. I think it's really interesting. Another subtlety, because I do think Celine Song is a subtle filmmaker too.
Mhm.
She does not hit you over the head with her points or
No.
her messages or anything. And I think one of the things too is if you really look at who she's having those really honest conversations with, it's the women.
Yeah.
She doesn't get that brutally honest with her male clients because they're not going to put up with it. They want to be painted a picture. They're going to cancel their membership if she, you know,
It's like the one guy where
tells them to be
she kept like having she's like, I have a 30-year-old. No,
Mhm.
that's closer
Yeah.
for yeah, and he's like 27. That's
Yeah.
the number we're
Eddie
stuck on
Cahill,
here.
by the way, he's
Yeah.
so funny. But yeah, so but like she had and of course she does have someone who complains, like one of the women does complain to her boss about her, but 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 it's women that she's able to have the have those conversations with and tell them like you are getting in your own way essentially. You need to be more realistic about what you are, who you are, and what it is that you're looking for. These guys just they don't exist, they're not out there. And I think that it's really important to that she's able to say that to the women because women can be honest with each other like that. And yeah, so that was one point. I don't remember what the other one was.
No, it's okay. I mean, I think that there's just I think also too by that point the job and also her relationship with Harry has fallen apart. And I think that
Yeah.
that's in a way like both the honeymoon period of both of those things in her life is over. Like she's
Yeah.
through the experience that she's had with the client with Sophie. Oh, I
Hmm.
forgot the actress that played her.
Zoe Winters, who
Zoe Winters,
was
who's
in
in
Succession.
yes, and is
Hmm.
absolutely incredible
Yeah.
in this film, and is really in a lot of ways the character that moves the film forward the most through what happens to her, what happens in the beginning of the film, and then of course in the climax of this movie. Like it's just such an important centralized character, Karen, because while we see Lucy's perspective of what this world is, what we see what dating can be, the choices that she has to make, we actually see the more than so the harsh reality through Sophie's lens of someone that just doesn't want to be alone, that literally says, I will settle. Like if Pedro Pascal walked up to her and said, would you like to be in my $12 million apartment? She's like, yes, I would take that in a heartbeat.
Okay, was there
And
just a small part of you that was hoping that
that it
those two
would be
would get
that
together?
man. Yeah,
I
that
wanted that for Sophie so bad.
I
But
think if any character deserves it by the end of this movie, it's her,
yes,
you know?
yes. But
Uh,
thank you. You reminded me of actually the other
yeah.
point I wanted to talk
There we
about.
go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But yeah, it's actually it's so we see that John has made some growth. He has made some progress in his life. We watch that happening with Lucy, where she got to a certain point in her life. She's very successful. We're told, the movie opens with her ninth wedding or ninth engagement or whatever. And then she's going to a wedding and of two of her clients, and she's clearly, very good. Everybody likes her. And this is just, and she's able to do this job because of the fact that she looks at it as numbers, not as people. And when she's confronted with the reality of people and she's seeing that something she never could possibly have known, there was nothing that would indicate that this guy would turn out to be this creep. um there's nothing, there's no way she could have prevented that from happening. But she starts to be confronted with the fact that these are people, they're not numbers. This isn't just a numbers game. It's not just about checking all the boxes. And once she has to really think about that and face it in the form of someone who, despite herself, she actually has cared about,
Yeah.
um, then that is where she really starts to focus on letting go of some of the things that she thought were important for her too. And I love how it's like she has that conversation with her boss, and her boss is just like, you love your clients, take a break, you're gonna be back, you love your clients. And she's like, no, I hate them, they suck, basically. But the thing is that she doesn't. She may hate some of them, but she doesn't hate all of them, because she obviously cares about Sophie even
Yeah.
before she realizes that she cares about Sophie. It's not just like, wow, I messed this up, I'm going to get in trouble for it. It's that, oh, wow, I overlooked something and somebody had to pay the price for that.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's really lovely for Lucy to not to experience. Nobody should have to experience that, but for the growth that she experiences as a result. Some people, like her own boss, she has that conversation. Her boss had a similar situation happen. We don't get the details, but it was similar. And it was probably around the same point in her career. Her boss was just like, it's fine, it happens to
Might have been
everybody,
just a couple of
move
years
on.
before, because this company
Exactly.
doesn't seem like it's been around forever. So
Exactly. Yeah. And
that it's
and
a average that it happens. I mean,
right.
I mean,
You bet you're here long enough, you do this job, it's going to happen,
yeah.
is what she is told. And she's realizing she just can't be that. She can't put up with that kind of number. Like that's a numbers game she's not willing to play.
But that's also a little bit too of the one time where naivete, because she's swept up in this relationship with Harry,
Mm-hmm.
is when she's caught off guard, and from that point on, because before that she wasn't like that,
Yeah.
and as she's starting getting all, man, those dinners and that sushi must have like really just clouded the judgment, because then she makes a grave mistake that she
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have normally made. And
Well,
I think a little bit, and I think that I that's at least how I interpreted Karen a little bit, is that like I think she gets, it's the one time where a trope does come in, but I think Song realizes, like, instead of just like, I think that the scene where she confronts Sophie, you would think that both of these two would have a giant monologue back and forth with one another, and I think that she doesn't. She's kind of catatonic and speechless, because she's like, I played out the scenario of finding her, but I never played out actually like what I would say, because she doesn't say anything of substance to her, which I actually
right.
kind of found to be very interesting, of like someone that is deeply bothered by this and what happened. But then when the opportunity is to talk to somebody, to that person, they actually don't know what to say, because now it's here and you have to face that reality. And I think that the minute that Sophie's event happens is her realizing, oh my God, like, wake up. Like, you need to start making real choices as well. And I think it's a wake up call for her, but it's not done in like this grand epiphany that we usually see in the genre. It's very internalized. And I think the way that Song shoots her with the ball cap on, chasing after Sophie, it it's it almost plays like a thriller at that point, her like chasing her down the street. The only time someone gets chased down in this romance movie is for that dramatic confrontation, and for her to hear potentially the words that she, I mean, she asked for that conversation, and then she hears the truth about what happened to her. And I think it's super effective, because then I think that from that moment, she makes the decision about her life, and makes the decision about Harry, and makes the decision about where she wants to be and who she needs to be with and what she needs to surround herself with. And not necessarily about the compromises you have to make there. I think that that's a different choice. But I think that that plays into the dream of that breakfast in bed and that apartment and everything. I think it does go like, wait a minute here. Wait a minute. You know, I've been I've been romanticized. You know what I mean? I've been algorithm just kind of like my clients are. And now I need to see what this actually is. What she was saying before she got swept up by all the romantic gestures, the dinners and stuff. And I do think that that then propels her to have that honest conversation with Harry. Maybe that's just how I feel about it a little bit,
Mm.
at least. But
I see it slightly differently. I do think that her conversation with Sophie in this, like when she confronts her in the street, I do think that Lucy was kind of hoping to be absolved. She definitely didn't have a plan, didn't know what she was going to say. It was just she became kind of so desperate to reach out to this person who was now suddenly ignoring her, and everything was happening um with lawyers and things. And I think that Lucy was just kind of hoping that she would just talk to Sophie and everything would be okay. And that's not at all what happened. I do disagree, though, a little bit about this just being because of her relationship with Harry. I think this was more of, because she makes a comment about she's been working with this woman for months
yeah,
and she's just this really nice girl. But the thing is, like, when she's talking with Sophie before she sends her off with this Mark P guy, who, by the way, is John Magaro. I thought that was really an interesting choice.
I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
that moment when you hear Magaro's voice, you're like,
Oh my gosh, I know.
and I'm like, oh, it's Magaro, and then you find out what happened. You're like, oh,
Yeah, well,
Magaro,
and like for that
yeah,
second, you're just like, oh yay, Sophie
yay.
found someone,
She found
maybe.
a good
But
guy because in your mind, in the world of Celine
right,
Song, John Magaro is a good guy. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And it's like,
But
no, he's a dick. You know what I
right,
mean? And that's-
yeah, in the worst way. But yeah. So what I think, more than being caught up in her relationship with this very wealthy, attractive man,
Mhm.
I think what got in her way was, oh my gosh, I just need this woman to have somebody, and it's not that hard. It's math. And
No,
it
yeah.
wasn't working out. And I think that's where she just kind of lost her way, was just in forgetting that Sophie was a person. And I think it was a little bit easy for her to do too, because when she had some people to suggest to Sophie, Sophie was rejecting them too. It's interesting that the person Sophie was rejecting turned out to be the person that, you know, did this horrible thing,
Yeah.
So it's like maybe she wasn't so dumb. Maybe she did have some intuition there
Hmm.
that was also being ignored.
No, I think that that's fair. I think you're absolutely right. And I do think that, but I do think that they kind of, your personal life can affect your professional and your
Oh, yeah,
professional can
absolutely.
affect your personal. And I
Hmm.
do think that there is a little bit of both of like, yes, I'm I maybe not because of what's going on in my personal life and I'm having my fairy tale come true. I am not seeing these numbers, these patterns the way I should. And then human instinct of like, well, I just want this woman to have what I have. Can't she
Hmm.
just go on this date? This guy, it adds up enough. And I think
It's
that
two
that's
inches. What's the
it's
big
yeah,
deal?
it's no what's the big deal? You know what I mean? Like he's not he can't be that bad. And she sort of pushes it on it when she normally wouldn't do that in
Right.
that circumstance. And I think that's, what
Yeah.
I'm saying is, and I think that that then floats with her relationship with Harry, and that's why she starts reevaluating her own self at the same time of worrying about Sophie. She's then going and doing, she's redoing the math. She's checking her own work as well as before she can check anybody else's. She has to check her own.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a really interesting thing for for her in Song. This is a very personal thing. She is basing this once again off of her personal experience as a matchmaker, to the extent of how much of what has happened to these characters in this film. We don't know. Haven't read that in any interviews yet, but we can deduce that things that happened with Sophie have happened long before she was with those services and probably while she was with those services. And because of just the terrible statistics that happen with human beings in our society. And the bigger the city, the worse it gets. And but that's what I think about that too, Karen, is that I think that they sort of intersect a little bit. It's not the full reason why
Yeah, that's fair.
she goes in, but she starts churning up the numbers. She starts pulling out the all the files again and goes, maybe I missed a digit here or something. Karen, is there anything else about the film that you'd like to talk about? I know that you just seen this, and but you're doing an excellent job, by the way,
Thank
of
you.
breaking this down. Just recently seeing it, I gotta say that
Thank you.
because it's a lot to tackle.
It is. It is. One thing that I really loved, and I know we're basically fully in spoiler
Yeah, we're
territory here.
fully spoiled territory.
Um, I think I think the moment that Lucy knew that it was done deal, she was going to be with John. I'm wondering if you have an opinion on this too.
Okay.
But for me, I think it was when they'd gone back to Sophie's place because Mark was maybe outside, and Sophie goes in, or Lucy goes in and is with her and talking to her. And then it's the next morning and she walks outside and John has been on that porch step all night. And just there's a look that she gives him that I was just like, that's it. Those two are together. They're never going to not be together again.
I mean,
And I just thought that was so just
what a romantic gesture to give someone of than time.
mm-hmm.
And that is a gesture of time right there,
Yeah.
spent outside, not bugging her, waiting and waiting
Mm-hmm.
for whenever she's going to walk out.
Yeah.
And, I totally agree with you. I got to say, the soundtrack to this movie is great.
So good.
So
So
good.
good.
I think Daniel Pemberton's score is wonderful as well. I think
Mm-hmm.
the original song by Japanese Breakfast is a banger and should be in the conversation. I know we're not going to talk about too much of award stuff. Because I
Yeah,
don't
it's a
know.
little early.
It's a little early, but of the original songs, it's like this and are the songs in Sinners original? Um, I have to, I
I
don't
do
know.
think they have an original song,
And
I
original song. So
think.
probably those two are the hot contenders to knock off Cynthia Riva later this year because we all know that's coming. But just a really great film. I'm curious how audiences are going to respond to it because Karen, it has been so marketed as a rom com, but also the way I also knew that this wasn't going to be outside of just knowing Song and her sensibilities as a writer and as from her first film and just kind of getting the general vibe from the trailer was I don't know if A24 has made such a commercial film like that ever in the history of their studio. I mean, I could be
No,
wrong, but
they've been working more toward getting
they've
to
been trying
commercial
to.
because they realized, oh wait, if we're gonna stick around, we have to make
We
money.
have to make some money. Yeah. but
I will.
but I didn't expect and like if this was from 20th Century Fox or if this was from, Warner Brothers or one of the big studios, maybe it does end up being like that more than we think, but studios aren't willing to make those those movies anymore. And
Exactly.
there was a great profile that Kyle Buchanan of the New York Times just had with Song, and she was talking about that. And a lot of it was about it's not really just the studios, it's actors unwilling to make these. Like we used to have Julia Roberts, and we used to have Sandra Bullock, and we used to have Kate Hudson. We used to have these notable names that could interchange guys, or the other way around. You had McConaughey, and he would go through his phases, or Hugh Grant, or you had notable faces in the genre that could, to be like just kind of like how it was with John Wayne in the Western in a lot of ways. And now we don't have that anymore, and it's up to people to pick up that mantle. And as the subversive way of this film, I think Celine Song has done so. And I thought someone that should be in the speed more often would be Dakota Johnson. I think she's really wonderful in this movie,
Yeah.
Karen.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting, just you started to talk about how will audiences respond to this. And so I saw this on a Friday at 11 a.m. in
Packed?
just a not packed. There were more people than I expected.
Okay.
But it definitely was not a full theater. But what I thought was interesting was partway like into it, it wasn't very far in. I think it was when it's kind of doing that montage of her meeting with some of the clients and hearing just some of the expectations that they have. And she's trying so hard to not insert herself into those, and you're just listening to people talk. And everyone was dead quiet. Everyone's just watching. And there's something that somebody said, I don't remember the line, and I laughed because I thought it was hilarious. And then other people kind of started laughing too. And then the audience kind of woke up a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
So, because I thought people were hating it at first. I wasn't really sure, just, kind of feeling the energy in the room. But by the end, pretty much every single person stayed through the credits. And
Wow.
people don't do that if they hate a movie.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I saw mine with a packed crowd. It was an early screening, and they were reacting to it. I'm just curious how it'll play. I mean, like the audience,
Mhm.
the audience score and all those. I
Yeah.
wonder how it will play because people are going to probably go in expecting that, and then they're going to get a drama,
Hmm.
a reflective romance
It's
drama.
definitely romantic. It
Yeah,
really is.
but
Yeah.
I think in the middle of summer, it's playing wide with this cast, you would probably expect it to be more on the calm than on the drum, and I am glad that it's in the drama, in the drama section. Um, Again, I did feel those influences of James L. Brooks, which is again a movie that we don't get made a lot anymore. Those kind of romantic films that are dramatic and are propelled by the decisions of adults, whether
Yeah.
they're in high stakes or low stakes or whatever. I mean, we're getting a new James L. Brooks movie later this year.
Hmm.
So worried about that movie, but because of his
We'll
last one,
see.
but we'll see. But again, I think that this movie works so well, and of the films released so far, I think it's head and shoulders one of the best we've got out there. And if people don't want to go and see the Dragon movie, or they don't want to see Lilo and Stitch this weekend, you should go and see this. This would be worth the time of the investment to go see this movie. Karen, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all. That's all we're here to do today. So I
Yeah.
think we did it. We talked about a great movie, and now we're gonna get out of here. Karen, can you tell everybody where they can find you and all your work on the internet?
Well, you can find my written work and some interviews at AwardsWatch. And you can find me on social media at Karen M. Peterson on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Letterboxd.
You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd at Ryan McQuade 77. If you like our podcasts, Thursdays we have Director Watch, and on this week's show, we are concluding the Peter Jackson movie series with reviews, plural, of the Hobbit
Mm.
trilogy. We decided one episode on the Hobbit trilogy was enough for all of you out there. If you didn't listen to Director Watch this past week, Karen was our lovely guest, and we talked about the Lovely Bones. Not as good as Materialists, but and not worth the rewatch if you haven't seen it already. But a great podcast nonetheless. We had a lot of fun having Karen on that episode with us. iTunes, Spotify, 5-star reviews. We greatly appreciate it. While you're on the website, please sign up for the newsletter. We greatly appreciate it. Next week, we will be back. We're going to be talking about the latest film from Pixar and Elio, and we will be talking about the return of Danny Boyle's horror futuristic franchise 28 years later. Double feature next week, Karen, here on the show. Super excited to talk about that as we're getting towards the midway point of this year. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you all next time.